Welcome to Season 4 of Copy Room Conversations, Releasing Imperfection and Normalizing Joy. My intention in sharing these precious humans with you is to inspire you to let go, let down, and remember that joy is love without inhibition, and love without inhibition is joy. With joy, we will not only survive, we will remember what it is to thrive, and so will our kids. Big thanks to our sponsor, Dirt Path Publishing, a company dedicated to publishing works with social impact. They are also the publisher of my book, Nothing's Missing, released earlier this year. For more information about my book, visit NicoleLuciani.com. And for more information on Dirt Path Publishing, visit dirtpathpublishing.com. In the meantime, and always, welcome to the Copy Room. I came to know Shauna through her Instagram, Teach for the Culture. The first thing I ever saw was a t-shirt that said, "Joy and learning must coexist." Something I've taken on as a bit of a mantra, if you remember Peter's episode earlier this season. Her merch was so cute, I loved seeing new things as she added them every couple of weeks. What I found myself doing, however, was sticking around not for her merch, but for her message. Straight, unapologetic talk to teachers in service to our kids. It didn't take long to know that Shauna was my people. And when I decided to dedicate a season to normalizing joy, I thanked my lucky stars for the DM feature on Instagram, and then again when she returned my message with an acceptance. Shauna issues several calls to action in this episode that I wholeheartedly co-sign. And if your legs get wobbly, go to her merch shop and get yourself a t-shirt or a hoodie to remind yourself and others just what you're here to do. Serve our kids with joy, which means also serving them with the love they deserve. Welcome. I'm so happy you said yes. Thank you so much for saying yes.
Thank you for having me, Nicole.
Let's just start back at the beginning. We haven't met before, so my intention in having you on this season, which is a season oriented to joy, is to really get your message extended even further, because I feel like my whole thing with you is I came for the merch, but I stayed for the message. Because I love what you put out. I love that it's unabashed. I love that it's unapologetic. I love that it centers on joy and liberation and loving our kids and loving ourselves. And it feels like the exact thing that we need as teachers right now. So let's start with a little backstory and tell me where you're from and a little bit about your growing up and how you came to this thing we call teaching.
Sure. So again, thank you for having me on. My full name is Shauna Brown. I go by S. Brown a lot. I was raised mostly in Connecticut, but also in New York, and I went to school in Philadelphia.
Okay.
I am the child of immigrants from Jamaica, and so I consider Jamaica my other home as well. I go back often as I can. And I am the daughter of an educator and an entrepreneur. And so here I am, both an educator and an entrepreneur. So I knew from age 3 that I wanted to be a teacher. And that has, always been my dream and my goal. By age 11 and 12, I started a babysitting company. I made business cards. I handed them out.
So cute.
I would volunteer, at the YMCA and in Sunday school. And so even as a child, I enjoyed working with younger children. And so it's just kind of always been a part of me. In high school, again, I still knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I started to develop my why behind the kind of teacher that I wanted to be. I went to an extremely diverse high school in Connecticut, but again, some of the same things that I talk about now are things that I experienced as a high school student and a middle school student. And so that kind of drove me to disrupt some of those things and to change the experience that too many youth were having, including myself, in school. And so again, it was a very diverse high school, very diverse middle school, but the disparities were glaring and very obvious. And so as a student and as a student leader, I organized with other students to start speaking up about what we wanted to see within the school. We were able to lead professional development for teachers, at 16 years old.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And it was like, and for me, it was absolutely amazing. And I can remember sharing, some of my experiences as a student, as a black girl within the school. And I remember looking at a couple of my teachers, and they had tears coming down. And that was like
Mm.
the first time I realized, like as a child, like, wow, they actually have feelings. They actually do care.
Mm.
And it was just, but I'm glad that, I was given the opportunity. But again, there were, a lot of the counselors, some of the students, they tended to kind of push out were students of color as well as students from lower economic backgrounds. There were glaring disparities within, who took which courses or who
Yeah.
was kind of recommended for which courses. So again, lower income and students of color were mainly in the lower tracks, whereas white students and students from wealthier backgrounds were in the higher tracks.
Hmm.
And so all of those things kind of just drove me. And I was like, you know what, when I become a teacher, when I become an educator, these are some things that I'm going to work on changing.
Mm.
But lo and
Mm.
behold, I didn't realize that I would meet those same challenges like 10 years later as an educator. And that
Right,
I would
right.
see some of those same issues kind of resurfacing, and they're kind of still here now. But again,
Hmm.
I started back then, and that was kind of the start of my journey as an educational advocate, was from age 16, and just
Wow,
wanted to see change within the system.
that's amazing. So you were born on fire, as they say, which is amazing. So let's just go like right to the heart of it, and if it's okay with you, and because I get nervous when we talk kind of around something, and that there's a lot of white folks who are going to be like, oh yeah, that's right, but they don't really know what you're talking about. So let's go to the heart of the matter, because you said you're seeing it 10 to 15 leaders as a teacher. In my experience in working with teachers, particularly teachers of color, it's like a two-prong attack, right? Because it's on my humanity as a learner and kids who look like me, and my humanity as an educator and many teachers who do not look like me.
Right.
And so one of your T-shirts says something like "disrupt the narrative," and you've got the one I just ordered was "unlearning." Tell us, like, let's just go to the heart of the matter and be direct about what it is, some of the things that you're talking about.
Sure. So I like to say, and thank you for, referencing back to my t-shirts. I like to say my t-shirts are the syllabus. And so I have a
Yeah,
shirt that actually says that.
yeah.
The disrupting deficit narratives text that you referred to is all about kind of reframing the way we think about kids, especially, black students, students of color, and students from economically suppressed backgrounds. The
Mm-hmm,
narrative is often what the students lack,
mm-hmm,
right? And so it's all about, oh, they come from these areas, they're coming without this,
mm-hmm,
they're coming unprepared, they're coming from homes which are broken. And so I've noticed in my years in education, a lot of the narrative around specifically black students has been that they're coming from a background which lacks, as
mm-hmm.
opposed to looking at the rich background and all the things and assets which they bring. There
Totally.
is, whole research and theory around kind of the deficit mindset in
Mm-hmm,
education,
mm-hmm,
as opposed to the asset-based approach. And
mm-hmm,
so I really advocate for the asset-based approach. So looking
mm-hmm,
at the brilliance that students bring, looking at the gifts that they bring, looking at everything they bring to the table, which sometimes many teachers, especially teachers who are white and or middle class who have not had a lot of interaction with black students,
mm-hmm,
believe about, black communities. And
mm-hmm,
so the disrupting deficit narratives is about that one. So the narratives that we tell and share about our students and their families, but it's
mm-hmm,
also about the narratives and things that we believe about ourselves.
mm-hmm,
And so a lot of times I think teachers or educators will say, you know what, I'm not really equipped for this. I can't do this. I don't know this. So I'm just going to stick to what I know. That to me is also a deficit narrative. Like you have to be able to lean into what you don't know and learn and unlearn
mm-hmm.
and just
Totally.
shift the narrative around that and shift the narrative around being like, oh, I'm not really a victim, but like, well, I never learned it. So what can I do? It's like kind of
Mm-hmm.
like giving up,
Yeah.
as opposed to saying, okay, I learned this. These are things I need to unlearn, and this is
Mm-hmm.
what I need to do and just also decentering yourself as the expert,
Yeah.
because we like to be. I think a lot of us learn that we have to be perfect or that we have to be the expert. You don't have to be the expert. And so
Right.
there's a wealth of knowledge in the classroom. There's a wealth of knowledge in the people that are around us. And so it's leaning into that as well and disrupting the narrative that we lack, that our students lack, and that nothing can be done about it.
God, that's so powerful. So, I've always believed, and I'm guessing that you are the same, that as teachers, really our primary job is to learn. And I think that every child or family that we encounter that's hard for us is here to be some sort of spiritual teacher for us. So when I started teaching in 1994, I had a lot of issues around conflict. So, of course, I got every kid who wanted to be in a fight. Right? Because that's just like God's way of saying, all right, we're going to deal with this. So I'm wondering, when you think about your time as a teacher, what have been some of the hard lessons that you've had to learn?
Oh, that's a great question as well. So I think when I first started teaching, I kind of went in with the thinking that I didn't know how much what a teacher did actually mattered in terms of student outcomes. Like, I knew a teacher would be there to guide, they're there to teach, but I didn't know as much like the direct correlation between what I am putting in, you'll see come out in terms of student outcomes and achievement, especially within academics, but socially as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the things that I really had to learn, and it was actually learned in a great way. Like, I remember just my approach to literacy when I taught sixth grade, and I remember the literacy facilitators coming to me and saying, "Look," like showing me the data. "Look how much
Mm.
your kids grew. Like, you did this," and I was like, "Oh."
That's
Like,
amazing.
so I was kind of, I was just like, "Oh, well, it's teaching," but I didn't really realize that direct connection to the outcome in student learning. And so seeing that, and especially seeing it in a positive way, was very eye-opening for me. And that's one of the things that I learned like very early on as a teacher.
That what you do matters.
Yes,
And the way that you do it matters, right?
exactly.
Your Instagram has this way about it that it's like the ultimate warm demander, right? I love when people come at you about grammar and you're like, no, let's full stop. Let's talk about language. I love
Right.
that. I love that. But it never feels like shamey or condescending. It's just like, here is the truth. Circle around, everybody. Let's get on board. Um, I wonder, how has teaching strengthened other parts of your life? I mean, you seem like you are a very strong girl anyway, very strong student anyway, but I'm guessing it's if it hasn't strengthened you in other ways, it's probably deepened you. So tell me about what teaching has done for you as a person.
Absolutely. And I love this question as well. So first, I think so teaching influences all parts of my life, and
Mm-hmm.
then parts of my life also influence teaching. So it kind
Mm-hmm.
of really goes both ways. You kind of mentioned my Instagram, and that's kind of how I am as an educator all around.
Yeah, yeah, I can.
Like, that's
It's just how you are. Yeah, yeah, I love it.
like, so I'm gonna infuse some. All right, we're gonna have times to reflect. I'm not gonna shame you, but we're also gonna reflect. We're gonna learn together. We're gonna laugh together. We're
Mm-hmm.
gonna culture is gonna be a part of it. And so that's just how I operate. But I think one of the ways in which teaching has influenced my life outside of the classroom is
Mm-hmm.
my ability to see deeper kind of into people and have a better or deeper understanding of what people may be going through.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of time people who are not educators or people who don't work with a lot of people on a daily basis,
Mm-hmm.
there's some things that they may not kind of catch on to in terms of, okay, so for example, person sees you at the red light, they blow the horn at you, you're not moving, and they explode, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's
Mm-hmm.
something else going on.
Yeah, yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of times, as a person who does not work with students all the time or with people all the time may just see that person as, oh, they're just being a jerk. But no,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes there's something else going on that caused that, and it's kind of teaching kind of helps me see things from different perspectives and navigate
Mm.
situations, looking at the humanity of a person as opposed to just what their actions were, but knowing that there's something deeper underneath. I would
Totally.
also say that I mentioned that things outside of the classroom also influenced me as a teacher, and to me,
Mm-hmm.
that's like everything. Like, I literally will be sitting somewhere and I'll see something that could be applied to the classroom or applied to
Mm.
learning. And
Mhm.
I've
Mhm.
done, I've taught sixth grade through high school. I've been a consultant. I worked at the district level. I worked as an assistant principal at one
Mm.
point. So like I'm seeing like all of these things from a variety of levels, and almost
Mhm.
everything I see outside of the classroom helps to influence what I do as an educator, and vice
Mm.
versa. So
Mhm.
again, just having a better understanding of people, what they may be going through, situations, how people may end up in certain places, the potential sometimes that may be untapped within people. I see that all the time outside of education. And I'm like, wow,
Mhm.
this person would have been really great at X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
Or
Mhm.
had they been told this in school,
Mm.
these are some of the ways they may have been able to envision themselves. Just, a variety of things, just especially with people's lives and
Yeah.
um, humanity overall, I'd say.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It sounds like you make a real, or maybe this is just how you are naturally. You're not separate. You feel really integrated to me. Like the way you do one thing is the way you do all things,
Yep.
and all things contribute to all things, right?
Yeah.
You're just like one whole human. Has that been something that you've always kind of been like that, or did that come with kind of maturity and age and
I think it
experience?
has. I've always been very, even from like a young age, like very reflective and very like I look deeply into things a lot of times, even
Mm.
from like again from a young age. I
Mm-hmm.
think that was one of the reasons even that in high school I started to see the disparities. That I'm in a school with 3,000 other students. Nobody else was like seeing those things in the same way or articulating them the same way. And I'm like, nope, I
Yeah.
see this. We need to take action. These are the patterns,
Mm-hmm.
and this is kind of where we need to go. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think I really do like who I am is who I am, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's not to
Yeah.
say that I'm static,
Uh-huh. Of
but
course.
just like at the core,
Uh-huh.
yes, this is who I am as a person, and it shows up in the classroom, in schools, in boardrooms, at state level, like it shows up at all levels.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things I do believe in as well, is just being your authentic self.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that really has helped me as both a person outside of education and as an educator as well.
Yeah. Well, and it's a permission slip to your students to also be themselves, right? And you feel very liberated to me, like your parents did a really good job raising you to know who you are and what
Yes.
you're. And that one T-shirt I love so much. It's a great day to be a beautiful black woman, or
Yes.
something like that. I just,
Yep.
to me, that just feels like, damn, I just want to sit with her and like absorb some of that. And I bet I'm sure for sure that your students, they carry that, they stand up a little bit straighter themselves because you probably give them that permission too.
Thank you. And I appreciate that you said like my parents instilled that. That is absolutely where that came from.
Yeah.
Like 100%. And I'm, grateful for that every single day,
Mm.
just because they were two people that did uncommon things unapologetically.
Mm-hmm.
They're both very much trailblazers.
Mm.
They both very much believe in like, you having an understanding of culture and self
Mm.
and confidence. And just like they always did stuff that was kind of like, all right, I have this idea, I'm going to do it.
Damn.
Like
Yeah.
we were the family that, at a time when a lot of people, especially like within the black community, don't like pets inside the house. Like my
Yeah.
mom had, she allowed like our birds to fly around the house. Like
People are looking at you like you're crazy.
yep. And just my dad and his like entrepreneurial pursuits and always focus
Mm-hmm.
on community. And so a lot of those things were instilled in me
Mm-hmm.
as a young person and a child. And so yes, I do definitely carry that into the classroom, and I try to, model the same thing for my students
Mm-hmm.
while they're with me. Like, you can't do anything. There's nothing that you can't do. You have to believe in yourself, love yourself,
Mm-hmm.
know who you are. And that's really like the foundation for me, as just confidence and being able to speak your truth and walk in your truth
Mm-hmm.
and just remain true to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
My first day of teaching, when I started out, that was the piece of advice my father gave to me. He
Mm.
said, just be yourself.
Mm.
That was the one piece of advice. And I didn't know how powerful that was back then.
Mm.
And I was like, be myself, like, of course. But I didn't realize,
Yeah.
what he was really saying.
Especially walking into a system that wasn't built for all kids, that wasn't built for all teachers, that wasn't built for this century, right?
Right.
Maintaining your sense of self is a real act of protest, right? Of rebellion. I wonder if you have any battles with like shoulds or perfectionism, or, I mean, are you so seeped in who you are and so grounded that that doesn't really play in, or does some of that play in your teaching? Tell us about that.
So I would say, like, I want to say yes, it does,
Mm-hmm.
but not really.
That's so great.
Like, it's
That's
it's
so great.
never really,
Tell
you
me more
know.
about that.
Like, so before the whole research around the growth mindset came out,
Mm-hmm.
and all the literature on that,
Mm-hmm.
that was how I operated already, like
Mm-hmm.
within a classroom, both for myself and for my students.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't about like celebrating an achievement or 100 or being perfect, but it's always been about the journey.
Mm.
And so I've always encouraged that with my students. Like, it's about the journey. We cheer each other on. We build community.
Mm-hmm.
And that community is centered around, all right, every single person is starting at a different place,
Mm-hmm.
but we're moving and we're moving together.
Mm-hmm.
And we're celebrating each other. We're clapping for each other. We're pouring into one another as we move along. So perfection was never a thing for
Mm-hmm.
me personally,
Mm-hmm.
but it's all about, growth.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're moving forward, as long as my kids were moving, as long as we're kind of moving together,
Mm-hmm.
then we celebrate that.
Mm-hmm.
But never just about being perfect. It's
Mm-hmm.
about moving and, discovering who they are.
That's beautiful. So, do you think that joy liberates, or does liberation bring joy? Or maybe it's both directions. What do you think about
Ooh,
that?
I love it. I love it. I love it because this is something I always think about.
Okay, good.
I really think it's in both directions. So I think having a sense of joy
Mm-hmm.
is liberating.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, through liberation, you can find
Joy.
joy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're really and truly intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're both extremely powerful together.
Mm-hmm.
I often say that, liberation also begins in the mind, because you can have, you can find joy in certain things or joy within, but then not fully believe in yourself. If you don't fully believe in yourself, you can't be liberated.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like they all kind of work together, like the confidence, the joy, the liberation,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they're really interconnected and just powerful and beautiful all together.
As you're talking, I started to think about the infinity symbol and how really like one feeds the other, that feeds the other, that feeds the other, feeds the other. That's really powerful. What ways do you feel like we can start to normalize joy? Like, what if someone were to come to you and either just watch you or talk with you about, I feel like my kids aren't liberated. I feel like there isn't joy. What kinds of things would you show us or tell us, or both?
I think first it definitely begins within.
Mm-hmm.
It also starts with, letting go or unlearning the feeling that things have to be perfect,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that you have to be perfect, or that, everyone around you or things have to go perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that, there's no such thing as like a perfect human or perfectionism within each of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so each of us are perfectly designed to be who we are.
Yes.
But the outside markers and metrics that say, okay, in order to be perfect, you must do this. In order to be perfect, you must achieve this.
Mm-hmm.
To me, those things are false.
Mm-hmm.
And so letting go of the idea of perfectionism
Mm-hmm.
definitely helps to liberate the mind, liberate the cells. I think it begins within,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to be able to model that for our students. And joy looks different for everyone.
Mm.
And so, what something that may bring someone joy,
Mm-hmm.
and the way it manifests within them, the way the outward expression of it is going to look different in every single person.
Mm.
And so, it's making sure we have just space for that too. Like, you can't script joy.
Mm.
You can't say this is what it is or this is what it is not.
Mm-hmm.
It is really and truly different for each person and
Mm-hmm.
they experience it in a different way.
Mm-hmm. So when you say it starts within, I couldn't agree more with you. I remember sometime during the pandemic, I don't know what made me think of it, but it was like, I've kind of forgotten what even brings me joy. Like, I don't even know that I know that. If I had a day to do whatever I want, I don't even know I would know what to do with myself. So when you're saying it starts within, is it things like that, like knowing what brings you joy and then putting that into action? Is it also this notion of, like you said, releasing perfectionism and just let you be you, like your dad's advice, like just be yourself? Is there more to that, or is that essentially kind of the essence of it?
I think the heart of it and the essence is knowing yourself,
Mm-hmm.
spending time with yourself outside of like a schedule or a
Mm.
script or
Mm-hmm.
following a curriculum guide or a pacing guide or
Mm-hmm.
outside of like daily to-dos at home.
Mm-hmm.
What is the thing that like that helps you to keep going?
Mm.
That it, to me it's like finding a part of your humanity
Mm.
and not just, you know, being the perfect quote unquote person that
Mm-hmm.
is getting things done, but it's that inner feeling to
Mm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I know especially for black communities, it's like outside of what everyone is trying to paint you as or describe you as, or outside of the oppression, what is the way in which you resist that?
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, what is the way in which, in a world that says you're three-fifths of a human
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
that you're less than,
Mm-hmm.
it's holding on to things that make you human and whole
Mm.
and loving.
So you're centering the counter narrative almost, like you're
Yes.
claiming
Yep.
it. And I'm also hearing you talk about like space, right? We don't need to be, you hear like bell to bell instruction, right? And you've got your 25 things that you're supposed to.
Yep.
It feels like in your classroom there must be breathing space that the kids can kind of let down, that you can let down. And not that you're not accomplishing, but that you're just creating some space. Is that something you do intentionally?
100%.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, again, like as a middle school teacher, I did that kind of on my own, even as a new teacher. So I
Mm-hmm.
created space for that, space to reflect, space to, you know, every day after lunch. And even though these are like, you know, middle schoolers,
Yeah.
every day after lunch, we're going to take a few minutes to just rest
Oh God, I
and
love it.
quiet
Mm-hmm.
with the lights off.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of them hadn't experienced that since like kindergarten and
Right.
pre-K, where you just take a nap time. It was just a quiet time.
Mm-hmm.
And if they didn't get, like, wait, we need our time. We need,
Totally.
you know,
Yeah.
what about it? You know, so yes, like, and again, as humans, like we need that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we have different personalities. There's extroverts, introverts, but we still need the time to just to be quiet for a few and
Yeah.
just rest.
Yeah.
We would still, you know, in addition to what's in the scripted curriculum, we need time to discuss. We need time to process. We need time to respond to what's going on, not just in the world, but in people's lives. You know, in my class, it was again focused on joy as well.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got our like district assessments back and our school assessments, my students were at the top,
Mm.
sometimes even across the whole city.
Mm.
And I was like, well, what are you doing that's different?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Treating them as human,
Yeah.
allowing them to rest, allowing them to talk, to process, the quiet time, like all of that,
Yeah.
focusing on joy as well, which is each individual person's loves and interests, and
Yeah.
you know, creating space for that too, not just saying, you know, that belongs somewhere else, or okay, you could do that at home, but
Yes.
let's talk about it. Let's bring it in.
Yes. I
And
love
once you
that.
bring those things in, I found that the students were more engaged and had like a deeper connection to what we're doing together within
Mm-hmm.
the classroom.
Oh, for sure. And it sounds to me also like you've created a collective, like there's an identity about your classes and a real belonging. You know, the first season of this podcast was about belonging and how, as teachers, we need to cultivate that for ourselves and for each other. Otherwise, we're not going to stay. Like, why would I stay if I don't belong, right? And it seems like you do that for your students when you talk about pouring into them and celebrating one another. In what ways do you see or not see that among your colleagues Do you see any elements of joy and liberation in your colleagues? Do you any of that collectiveness? Tell us about the people you work with.
I would say, like, absolutely. So I've worked in Philadelphia, Brooklyn, Hartford, Connecticut, for a magnet in Connecticut. And so I've been in a lot of different schools, different levels. And I would say I've seen it in different levels at each school,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also very individual. But in each case, it's very much that the teacher has helped to kind of cultivate the space within the classroom,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because it can be totally different within one school, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could,
Mm-hmm.
go down the hall or go to a different grade level, go to a different classroom, and there's different feelings. And so, again, as you said at the beginning, like what we do as teachers and the classroom teacher, it does matter,
Mm-hmm.
not only for academics, but for, the teacher sets the pace and kind of helps to cultivate the climate for the whole classroom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it definitely does come down to the teacher. And I've seen a variety. I've also seen some, that were not
Mm-hmm.
joyful, liberating.
Mm-hmm.
My first experience as a student teacher in North Philly, I was working with a teacher who was going to retire that year. And I remember a little girl had, we took the kids to the restroom, and a little girl she was chewing gum, and the teacher told her to put it on her nose. She's like, "You're not supposed to be chewing gum. Put it on." And she started yelling at her and screaming to put it on her nose.
Oh my God.
And I'm here like, I'm 21 and just graduating. I'm supposed to be learning from this person.
Yeah.
But again, just because of who I am partially, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, no, no, no.
Mm-mm.
Like, if that was my child,
Uh-uh. Uh-uh.
we can't do that.
No.
And she's like, what do you mean? They're not supposed to have gum. But yeah, so I've seen, the whole gamut
Yeah.
of like best practices and practices that I would never, ever, ever want for any child.
Mm-hmm.
But it really comes down to the teacher. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I asked this question of my own curiosity. I taught school for over 20 years, and now I'm doing teacher education. And part because it was like, well, I feel like I've learned this teaching gig. 20 years is like PhD in practical, teaching.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't want to be an assistant principal because to me, that felt joyless. And so we're going to have somebody else on in this season who is an assistant principal and is like the most joyful human I've ever met. But I wonder what was your experience like? Because you're dealing now with adults who really need to remember that this job is joyful,
Yes.
really need to remember that our kids are not robots, they're actual human beings. And that's can be really hard, right?
Yes. So I love that you said that, and I love that you said you're dealing with adults that really need to remember that this profession should be joyful too, right?
Yes.
And so I think my approach, so it was a middle school assistant principal.
Mm-hmm.
My approach was very similar to my approach in the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
even with the teachers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I found that again, we started to really develop that community, that sense of, yes, it's okay to be you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay not to be perfect, but we are going to move together. We are going to grow together. Your kids are going to grow as well.
Yeah.
If there are issues going on in the class, we are going to like look deeply at them and help to, see what's going on, without being judgmental, but, very solutions focused,
Mm-hmm.
at the same time as being like collaboratively focused or collective focused.
Sure.
We're gonna, look at these things and nail them out.
Yeah.
And I found that even as an assistant principal, I think my approach was to be curious also, not to let go of my joy, but to also be curious. So, all right, what's going on? Looking at each person individually and looking at how it can help to solve the problem and be of service to others. While also not forgetting that, yes, joy is important as well. And so for me personally, like I found ways to bring in some of the things I love into the job, into the school, so that I could remember that joy
Yeah.
and model that for teachers and for students.
Okay.
For example, like I loved at that time, I was like big into like Zumba and
Mm-hmm.
dance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'd go dance with the kids, Zumba with the kids, go in gym.
Mm.
I'd go play basketball with the kids.
Love it.
We would have like math nights. We had a college awareness day where everyone wore their college gear,
Mm-hmm.
hands-on activities, and so anything that you know, I'm like a math geek too. So anything that I
I
think was
love
like
it.
just like fun and like hands-on,
Uh-huh.
brought it in. We did it either with the teachers or with parents, with students, with everyone.
Yeah.
And so just bringing things I love to keep me joyful as well.
Well, that's a huge lesson right there in and of itself, right? To remember, like, if you don't love it and you're trying to teach it, that's going to suck for everybody. Right? So there is
Absolutely.
something about standards and the importance of, like, fundamental knowledge, but two things: one, push back on what is fundamental, right? And
Right.
who gets to decide that. And secondly, just to remember that, like, I just saw on your Instagram the other day something about science, and like science is everywhere, and like just
Yeah.
this idea, like approaching with curiosity. I think that's
Yeah.
a really important lesson in joy. Let's talk about your Instagram and your shop. Tell me what brought you to that space. I mean, okay, Dad's an entrepreneur. You've always had a little bit of entrepreneur spirit. Did the idea come like, I need to make some extra money, I need a side hustle, or did the idea come because you really wanted to spread this message, or maybe was it just like, oh, look, both of these things happened at the same time?
Yeah, it was actually like it was a message,
Mm-hmm.
100%. So I look back even the other day to my very first post on Instagram. That was 2018 on this account.
Mm.
And the very first post says, "This is a space to celebrate joy,
Mm.
joy and teaching, and joy and teaching and learning and in learning." And that has always been like, again, part of the way that I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, okay, learning is fun. It's learning all around us, not just in the classroom.
Right.
But it was, started out of joy,
Mm-hmm.
and out of wanting to build community,
Mm-hmm.
and out of wanting to share and get other ideas and connect people and connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
That was the whole kind of crux of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started by designing one shirt. I designed just like a logo for the page, and I was like, oh, I want this on a shirt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I made it into a shirt, and I was like, oh, other people could have this shirt.
Yeah.
And then I started with that one design.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I went along, I started designing, other shirts based on educational philosophy or just messages I wanted to get out, or messages that I thought could help to spark a conversation through fashion, through the t-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's how it kind of just started. It was like, even my shirts, I don't make a lot of profit on them.
Right.
It's just, but the message and the community are what are the most important things for me.
Yeah.
And that's how it's kind of always been with it. So it's just something on the side. It also, I found that even, at the early stages of the pandemic and through the pandemic, that this helped to bring me joy.
Mm.
Like designing merch,
Mm-hmm.
interacting with people,
Mm-hmm.
seeing people wear the merch, like all of those things help to bring me joy as well.
That's so
And
great.
so,
So you're feeding yourself so that you also are prepared to feed others, right? To continue.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so
Absolutely.
lovely. That's got to feel really good when you're just scrolling along and some stranger has tagged you in a t-shirt that you made that they're wearing.
Right.
And it's like, what an amazing gift that is.
It is, it is, it is, it is. And again, like to me, the culture shop,
Mm-hmm.
the name of the shop, it wouldn't be anything without the people who support it, without the people who buy the merch and spread the messages. And what I love is when people come back to me and say, hey, I wore this shirt here.
Mm-hmm.
It was able to spark a conversation about this, or people commented this, or just, getting to hear people's personal stories,
Mm-hmm.
where they work, what they've been going through, and how either the account or the community or the merch has helped them.
That's great.
That really does it for me.
Oh, fuels you, I bet.
Yep.
So Instagram and TikTok, right?
Yep.
Okay. And it's Teach for the Culture, not Teaching
Yes.
for the Culture. Because when I
That's
was
right.
Googling to do my research for today, I found this whole other thing. And I was like, no, that's not her. Teach.
Yeah, no.
It's just Teach for the Culture. And then
Yep.
the shop, they can find pretty easy on
Yep.
Google
The
as
Culture
well.
Shop too.
The Culture
.com.
Shop.
Yep.
I love it. So let's kind of gear down the last two questions we ask all the guests. And one is we have a playlist on Apple Music that's called the Copy Room Conversations playlist. And this is a song that if you want to have a good day of teaching, you want to get yourself in a good headspace, what song do you turn on for yourself?
So there's lots of them, but I'm gonna go to Bob Marley.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'm gonna represent my Jamaica.
Good, good, good.
I'm gonna go to Bob Marley. Don't worry about a thing,
Mm,
or coming in from the cold is called. And so I think Bob, like Marley, helps me to get through things.
mm, mm-hmm,
It's not like hype music,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
but it's like, to me, it's like it feeds my soul. It's like
mm,
soulful.
mm-hmm.
And so I would say Bob Marley. I'm going to go with Don't Worry About a
I
Thing.
love that. That's so great and perfect for everything that we've talked about today. So, the last thing, the name of this podcast is called Copy Room Conversations because those to me were my favorite conversations in the morning before school, and everybody's, there's like a buzz, right? And I found that we had quick but really intimate conversations in the copy room. And so I'm wondering if, I'm cutting strips of paper, you're punching holes, someone's running copies. As you're exiting for a good day, what are you going to leave us with? What's your quick tip for a really good day for us?
Ooh. So I would say remember your why.
Mm.
Remember to do the things that you love
Mm-hmm.
and take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think without those three things, it's hard to care for or pour into our students. So you just have to remember who you are, why you're doing what you do, and you're taking care of yourself also.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, find what brings you joy
Mm-hmm. I love it.
and hold on to that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for sharing your time with us in the copy room. Whether you're on your way to school, on your way home, walking your dog, or doing your household chores, I wish you a day of letting down and letting go. Remembering your birthright is to operate from a place of joy, even if your heart's broken. Perhaps especially when your heart's broken. Thank you to Dirt Path Publishing for producing this podcast, and to you for listening.